The Second World War scarred the world with death and destruction. Yet, out of those dark days, there grew a friendship that has transcended time. Canada and the Netherlands have a bond that few countries have ever enjoyed. The Dutch suffered greatly as an occupied nation, and Canada came to their aid.
Bevrijding, that's liberation. Vrijheid is freedom. Freedom. I think you can only know what is freedom when you had a time you didn't have freedom.
There's a great love between Dutch people and Canadians.
That's something so unique, special. Love, it's a love affair.
And it's because the Canadian soldiers gave back after 5 years of occupation our liberty, our freedom.
We, the Dutch, will never forget what the Canadian soldiers did and the Allies did for us.
The Netherlands had been neutral in World War I and planned to do the same as Europe teetered towards war in 1939. Their willingness to provide refuge to oppressed groups made the country a primary destination for Jews escaping Nazi persecution. Hitler's guarantee of Dutch neutrality in 1939 eased many minds. Less than a year later, that promise would be broken as the Nazis invaded the Netherlands.
On May the 10th, we woke up and my father was putting paper strips in the windows to try and keep them from shattering as the planes were droning overhead.
My father and I were standing outside in the garden and we heard pang, pang, pang above our heads. And that was an air fight. And I remember my father saying, "That's the end of us." You know, up till then, because we had been neutral in the First World War. And we were Jewish. I'm Jewish.
German paratroopers landed around my former hometown of The Hague. Their intention was to capture the government and the Queen.
The royal family left for England. That was Queen Wilhelmina, Princess Juliana, Prince Bernhard, and their 2 children at the time. And very soon, Juliana apparently it wasn't safe for her to stay in England, they figured. So she left, I think, by ship to Canada with the 2 princesses. And the 3rd daughter, Margriet, was born here. And in 43, I believe, and Margriet, when she was born, they declared that part of the hospital as Dutch territory so that she would be a Dutch citizen.
Holland never counted on that the Germans would invade Holland. The government didn't, and the people didn't expect it. Didn't happen in World War I, and they never thought it was going to happen in World War II.
The Dutch army was ill-equipped, very small.
Well, I was in Rotterdam at that time. I was a nurse in the hospital, in Koolsingel Hospital, and we had already lots of wounded people, wounded soldiers in. But I said, well, we are safe here for the Red Cross on the roof. And lo and behold, the hospital was bombed.
Rotterdam got bombed. That was the end of the war. Because the German threat was there. If you don't surrender, completely surrender, we're going to do the same thing to other cities.
The invasion that was to take only 1 day lasted 5. Brave Dutch resistance ended in the face of overwhelming odds. The casualties were devastating, and a stunned Dutch populace faced occupation.
In the beginning, it was hardly noticeable, except that there were some Germans.
In the beginning of the war, they tried to bribe us, more or less, you know. Tried to be friendly and all that, trying to talk us into it, that it was a good thing.
They treated us with whatever we wanted. Candies, food, whatever. And that lasted for a while, and then it changed.
The Germans handled the occupation of Holland differently than all of the other nations that they invaded. They installed a civilian government instead of the usual military command. They kept the Dutch bureaucrats and laws. Seyss-Inquart was named Reichscommissioner, and subtly Nazi control seeped into the everyday lives of the Dutch.
The announcements, how to behave and all that, to get your citizen card. And gradually they started to enforce their ruling.
In November, they asked all personnel of government institutions and municipal institutions, universities, schools, to sign a declaration of Aryan blood. And if you weren't an Aryan, it meant you were a Jew. And then slowly after that, they fired all the Jews.
I became very conscious of the war as a Jew in 1942. There was a decree by the Nazis, the occupying forces, I should say, on May the 1st, that all Jews from age 6 on had to wear a Star of David.
I had two very, very close friends. We grew up together. We did everything together. And all of a sudden, and they were Jewish, and all of a sudden they had to wear a star on their clothing, and I didn't. And I was allowed to go to the beach, but they weren't. And it was time to go to start school, and they were not allowed to go to the school I was supposed to go to.
And that was for my family, we weren't Jewish, really the major problem of the war. The persecutions of the Jews.
We were used to having the Jews around, and we always have been very hospitable having the Jews there, so we couldn't understand this.
The Jews are very assimilated, so the people who weren't that interested didn't even know that there was a big problem, I think.
The other thing that was very noticeable is that my mother had to close her business, because that was also a decree by the occupiers that no Jews could have a business.
They established a ghetto in the city of Amsterdam, barbed wire around several blocks of city houses.
Slowly, people living outside Amsterdam were sent to Amsterdam. That was more
the Jews.
The Jews. That was convenient, of course, for the Germans.
You could feel something was terribly wrong.